Welcome everyone to AbbeyCast. Very grateful for tuning in today. Today's episode has moved us out of the office for the Spirituality Center and into the atrium here at Daylesford Abbey. Very grateful to have with us today Frank Kenney and Kate Wunner, who are two of the associates, the Norbertine Associates here at Daylesford. So we're going to learn a little bit about the associates today, maybe hear some stories from your time being an associate, and see where that's going to take us to in the future with faith life. And the thing that I'm really interested to learn about from the two of you today is the interaction between the laity and the religious, right? Mm-hmm. And how that has played out. So Kate is the current director of the Norbertine Associates here at Daylesford, and Frank is former director, the first lay director of the Associates, and he and his wife Betty Ann were the very first associates here at Daylesford. Frank, if I could start just by asking if you'd be willing to take us into the history with as much detail as you feel comfortable. How did it all start here at Daylesford with the Associates?
Okay, well, in 1999, Betty Ann and I went on a pilgrimage from Daylesford to probably 6 or 7 different countries and Norbertine Abbeys in Europe. And at each place, we met lay people. They had different names in different abbeys. For instance, at Burn Abbey, the grandmother abbey of Daylesford, the people who would be our equivalents were called participants. Okay. And I don't remember the names in Germany or in Czech Republic or wherever else we went, but these people were acting independently, but under the auspices of the Norbertine lay professed there. And they pretty much ran the Abbey's activities, Burn Abbey's activities over there. And it was the first place that we stopped when we landed in the Netherlands. Mm. And we were there, I think, for 3 days. And the signature charism that I noticed immediately was hospitality. Mm. And that carried through at all the other places that we went subsequent to Burn. And it was just very, very impressive to Betty Ann and to me, mm-hmm. and really gave us a yearning to become more involved, more committed to this abbey. Mm-hmm. And so when the trip was over, we prayed about it back here, talked about it, and approached Father Andrew Fernie. Okay. And I think the first thing I said to him was that in my next life, I think I'd like to come back as a Norbertine. And Andrew said, well, you don't might have to wait that long. And I said, why? He said, well, as you saw, there were participants and other named groups in Europe. But he said, here in the United States, there's a group of associates at De Pere, at St. Norbert's Abbey in Wisconsin. And so I communicated with a couple of the associates out there and just got a rough idea of what it was they were doing. And came back and talked to Father Andrew about it and presented the information that I'd learned. And then with his agreement, I put together a proposal for Abbot Rossi, Ron Rossi. Mm-hmm. And he approved it. And so probably within a month of the time that we proposed the idea, we were underway. And Father Nicholas Terrico was the first Norbertine with whom we dealt in a period of formation. Mm. And the formation period, for us, it ran 2 years. Okay. And we met with Father Nick probably monthly. And at his suggestion, we each got ourselves a spiritual director. Mm. And I'd even never heard of spiritual direction up until that point.
Okay.
And that was really a turning point in my life, and I know for Betty Ann as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so just fast forwarding, 2 years later, we became the first committed associates to Daylesford Abbey. And there were some people who heard about it and questioned us about it.
Mm-hmm.
And so with Father Nick's agreement and Father Andrew's agreement, there was an advertisement put out,
Okay.
a memo in the Sunday Bulletin that this was a new movement that was in its infancy here at the Abbey. And probably at the first meeting, somewhere about between 50 and 60 people showed up.
Wow.
And they formed the second formation group.
Okay.
And they met, I don't remember how long they met, it might have been 2 years also.
Mm-hmm.
But long story short, after 3.5 to 4 years, there were over 60 associates here.
How about that?
And then I think there was another group the year after that was completed. And I think maybe about 10 people came forward.
Okay.
So the number of associates, given attrition for health reasons or, people passing on,
Right.
or moving out of the area, the numbers always been pretty steady. I think somewhere around 50 to 55 people.
Okay. Okay. And now you said this all started essentially with a pilgrimage.
Right.
Right. Now, was there a theme in part to that pilgrimage? Was it something that you were doing a part of a group? Did you and Betty Ann decide to do it yourselves?
Well, no, there were probably 30 people on pilgrimage. They were all people from the Abbey.
People from Daylesford. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
And it had nothing to do with associates because there were no associates at that point.
Mm-hmm.
But we all pretty much knew one another.
Mm-hmm.
And as I say, we traveled to probably 6 or 7 different countries
Mm-hmm.
and went to that many Norbertine houses,
Mm-hmm.
canonries, and prayed together, had Eucharist together, had Vespers together. And as I recall, there were, in addition to the 30 or so lay people,
Mm-hmm.
there was Father Andrew, Father Nicholas, Father Dominic,
Mm-hmm.
and Father Hubert, the Doyne, who
Okay.
has since died.
Mm-hmm.
And we really got to know them and really developed a small community with them and just became a lot closer
Okay.
and a lot more of a mind to commit ourselves to something bigger.
Yeah.
And so that was the model, I guess, that we harken back to.
Right. Right. It seems very organic too, the way it all happened. Now, Kate, when did you come into the picture?
So I was in that first group of 50 or 60 people.
Were you on this pilgrimage
that
as well?
showed up. No,
Okay.
no. And I had been quite involved with the Abbey up 10, 12 years by that time.
Mm-hmm.
But I was so excited about the idea of a group of spiritual seekers coming together. So I was born Catholic and grew up in a very, very Catholic environment in Scotland. And most of the Scots who are Catholics are Irish of descent. So the parishes were heavily priested by Irish priests. And it was it was lovely. It was a very traditional going to church. Oh my goodness, we went to church a lot. Everything revolved around, the Rosary in May, the Rosary in October, devotions every Sunday night, First Fridays, 9 Saturday. We were just there all the time. But it was about liturgy, I suppose, ritual. It wasn't really so much about community with God.
Okay.
Because there was the parish and all their activities, the men's group, the women's group, and then there was the priest, or the priests, and God up on the altar. It didn't. But I went to college when I was 18 to the Sisters of Notre Dame to Namur, the ones who are here. They had a college in Glasgow, which is now part of Glasgow University. And it was right at the time of Vatican II. and the sisters really embraced Vatican II. And there was a group in this college, it was a women's college, called the Grail, and you could belong or not belong, but it was the first time I encountered a spiritual group of like-minded seekers. I loved that. We read Michel Cloist, and we had retreats, and we met, I think, once a week. And it was the first time I'd ever encountered real spiritual growth, I guess, at the turn of becoming an adult.
Right.
But when I left college, went to work and went back to the parish, joined the choir, but I never had that group feeling again. So when I first heard about the Associates, I was so excited. I thought, I wonder if this is going to be like the Grail. I wonder if this is going to be a real spiritual adventure of growth. I mean, I think that spiritual growth is individual for people, but I think it is definitely helped and supported by a group of people who are looking for the same thing. So I was really interested, and we didn't know what it was going to be like at the beginning. And Nicholas said, "We've no idea where this train is going. Just get on it." And so we all got on it. And it has been much more than I ever hoped. We exceeded my expectations.
That's fantastic. It's interesting that you share the larger scope of your journey too. Thank you for that. With that transition point from, I don't want to say childhood, but your young life to your adult life, right? Which would encapsulate all your childhood and your teens and your college years. And that point of transition is so critical, I think, in all of our spiritual lives, which you say are individuals, but in recognizing that collective, that communal aspect of spiritual growth and spiritual work, and how having a community to be part of is such an essential part of that. So, Frank, I would imagine that you were at a similar part in your faith journey when you were on that pilgrimage, when you're at the Abbey, when you meet or you witness the laity involved with the professed religious there. Would you care to share about maybe? Do you think you were going through a transition at that point, or were you at a point of?
I think I was in the middle of it. We lived. Well, Betty Ann and I are both natives of this area.
Okay.
The both of us had 16 years of Catholic education. I guess when I was about 27 or 28, I took a job that took us out of state. We lived out in Kansas City for a while.
Okay.
And we were only there a year, and that's where we adopted our first son. And then we were transferred to Virginia, to the Norfolk area of Virginia.
Okay.
And we lived down there for 8 years. And Catholicism in Newport News, Virginia, where we lived, was probably maybe 10% of the Christian population. So I think there were 2 or 3 churches in the city. We were in one of them. And we really came to understand what community was there, because we were a distinct minority. And so we really became very active in that parish. Betty Ann was involved in liturgy. I was involved in what they call Christian service down there. We were both readers. And when it came time to be transferred again back to Philadelphia, we had apprehensions because we had really embraced Vatican II. And Vatican II was a lot more accepting when we lived in Kansas and when we lived in Virginia than it was in the northeastern United States.
Okay.
And so we had some concerns about coming back here. And we were talking to our pastors down there, our pastor, and he said, "Well, I know this guy, Andrew Safferny. He's a Norbertine at a place called Daylesford Abbey."
A lot of people seem to know that guy, Andrew Safferny.
Yeah. And Andrew was down there as an architectural consultant for a new church that this pastor was going to build.
Okay.
And so we got transferred up here, bought a house, and then started exploring the area. And we found the Abbey. And the first Sunday that we came over here, we attended Mass, loved it, and then saw all these Norbertines after the Mass, mixing, mingling with the lay people. And so we approached this younger, dark-haired Norbertine priest and said, "Excuse us, Father, we're Betty Ann and Frank Kenney. We just moved here from Virginia, and we were told by our pastor in Virginia to look up one of the Norbertines, Andrew Safferny." He said, "Well, I'm Andrew Safferny." And so that was the start of our relationship with Andrew, and then because of that, we became more involved in the day-to-day living with the Norbertines. We both began to come to the 4:45 Mass that they had here. And just really, really knew that this was the place for us, that this was no accident that we had mentioned our concerns to the priest in Virginia. And that's how it all started. So I think when we lived in Virginia, another thing that had a big impact on us is that we were both members of the Cursillo movement.
Okay.
And that really introduced us to another level of community and of commitment. So we knew that things could be better always. And so coming back here, this is what we needed to find.
Yeah.
And we found it here.
Yeah. I find it very intriguing how the both of you are kind of at these juncture points of seeking, right, is the word that keeps coming up between the two of you. And
I had a little false start with the Abbey, though, when I first...
Okay.
I moved to America in 1976. And someone told me about the Abbey, and someone said there's I too found the Philadelphia Archdiocese very conservative, even compared to Scotland, believe it or not. And so I was looking, and somebody said, try the Abbey, and I was working, but there was a Mass on Wednesday evenings at 7 o'clock. And I didn't know it was a charismatic Mass. It was Dominic and his body of Christ. So I showed up at 7 o'clock or 7:30 on a Wednesday night, and the church was packed. And I came in and I moved into the edge of a pew, and the lady sitting beside me turned round, gave me a big hug and said, "Welcome, sister." And I nearly died. I was way too Scottish at that point. I still didn't hug. I mean, I thought, oh my goodness. And partly through Mass, some people started praying in tongues. So I literally fled the Abbey at the end of that Mass. And I went home and said to my husband, I think it's a cult. And it was many years later, it was 1988, my mother died, and a friend gave me a Mass card from the Abbey, and I said, oh, yeah. And she said, no, there's a beautiful Mass at 4:45. It's in a little chapel, and it's lovely. She said, you'd love it, try it. And I was teaching in a local school, and it was very easy for me to finish up about 4 o'clock, do something in my classroom, come over here at 4:45, and that's when I fell in love with the Abbey. That was a lovely Mass.
Yes, yeah.
And there was always a little sermon. And the very first one I went to, it was David Lawler, Father David Lawler, who said the Mass, and his sermon, it was just like 3 minutes long, but I felt he was singing my song, telling my life with his words, the way he spoke to me, and I was hooked on the Abbey.
Thanks for sharing that. I think those transparent stories are very important for people that are, like discerning what's the next step in my journey, right? Because, you can try out a new church or parish or community or whatever group, whatever it is, and at first have a really awkward experience about it. I actually recently did a podcast with Abbot Dominic, and that's something we talked a little bit about, was finding yourself in these situations where you're like, I'm not sure this is for me, but then upon a second try or meeting someone that draws you in a little bit more, you find that there is a home atmosphere to it.
And we stayed in our parish for 3 or 4 years after that, and I just came really almost every day to the 4:45 Mass here, but that was all I did at the Abbey. But then took a new job and couldn't get here at 4:45, and not being here at all didn't work. Just going on Sunday to our parish wasn't enough spiritual nourishment. It didn't work. And I said, well, I have to go to the Abbey. And he said, okay. So off we came.
Very nice. Well, it's interesting to me too how you're both at a point in your journey where you don't need to start from scratch, right? You're not turning your back to the church or the faith you were raised with. You're seeking something that takes you beyond where you're at. You're not looking to go against it. You're looking to grow. You're looking to evolve. And you find the Abbey here at a pivotal time in both your lives when it sounds like you needed that larger community to be a part of, because that was already a part of you and your faith identity. And that's, I think, a challenging part of faith, because if we go back to what you talked about, Kate, about faith being a personal journey, but also tied in, interconnected with everyone's collective journey, we have to recognize that it's not a duality, but it's just the whole, right? It's everything together in one. And I'm assuming that the associates have not always agreed upon everything at all times, right?
You think?
I was going to say, I think that's one of, when you look at it in a strange way, it's been one of our strengths, is our associates are on a wide spectrum of faith, on their faith. Everybody's in it, not everybody, but there are a lot of different spots and places where people have landed. And it's been good because people aren't afraid to talk about it, or, you know.
Right.
I mean, at one of our last retreats, we had a sister speaking, and someone came up to me right after the first talk she gave and said, Kate, you have to tell her she can't talk about this kind of thing. And I said, I'm not going to tell her anything, but if you would like to speak with her, I'm sure she's willing to listen. And she did, and it all worked out. But that's, you know, the associates are not a group of sheep all marching in the same direction, for sure.
So I know that we kind of had some prompts we talked about before this that we talked about, but to put you both on the spot maybe a little bit, would you care to share how, you just kind of gave a small example there, but maybe how challenges within the associates that have been presented internally or just, you know, now in 2020 by the outside world, how they have helped your growth communally?
I think that one of the biggest challenges was we had a situation a few years ago where a directive from the Archbishop had said that certain people couldn't do certain lay people couldn't do certain functions, and one of them was be a reader if you were in a specific situation as a lay person. And we had someone in that situation, and Abbot Richard felt that this person really couldn't read anymore. And oh my goodness, it was, I think, one of the most trying times we've had.
Yeah, it was a real challenge. Yeah, I think probably 10, 15 people left the Abbey.
Oh, wow.
Over this, just because of their, they had relatives who were in similar situations to this person.
Okay.
Who was
the person was gay and in a same-sex marriage.
Okay.
And so the Abbey lost some people, and some of them have returned, but some of them have not.
And they weren't all associates. I think we lost about 4 to 6 associates. Stopped being associates.
Okay.
But some people kind of stopped, right? I mean, almost every reader said, I'm not reading again. And, you know, and I think, how did we get through that challenge? I think we got through it by talking. We had a lot of talk among ourselves at meetings, and Abbot Richard held meetings where people could just vent. And so I was the director at the time, and
Thank God.
There was
I said, thank God.
there was a lot of pressure that we should, you know, do something against the Abbey's decision as associates, like a whole group protest or letter or something. And I really I didn't want that to happen.
Sure.
I really didn't want that to happen. And I really felt for Richard. I think he was in a no-win spot. And in terms of, again, there were many associates who thought we should just take the Archbishop on and say, get out of our face, we're not doing what you tell us. And there were other people who felt that the Archbishop was right, practically. So it was very difficult. And it was funny because it's not funny, but at Dominic's, when Dominic became the abbot, at his investiture or whatever, he comes out after being robed as the abbot, and he makes all these, I don't know if they're vows or commitments. You were probably there at that service.
I think I was, yeah.
And do you remember how often he vowed the Abbey in service of the local church? And he promised the Abbey, he wasn't promising obedience to the Archbishop, but almost, saying, I thought he had, and it dawned on me then, I thought you had absolutely no choice in that situation.
Right.
And I felt at the time the associates needed to support him, and I think it worked out.
Yeah.
That's an important, thank you for sharing that, Kate. And I think that's an important dynamic that in the world right now is absent or not being brought into focus in terms of communication and what it takes to work through conflict together, right? There's a lot of, even this term cancel culture I've heard, right? Now it's like, what is it going to cancel cancel the readings, or cancel mass, like, because you don't agree with something that's said to you. That is a huge problem. And the way that you demonstrated and how you navigated through that in solidarity with each other. And yes, people make their own individual decisions to leave or stay, right? But it seemed like there was a real group mind in working through that, and a group heart too, that is very apparent to me, at least in my experience with the Norbertines. I've had quite a mixed bag of experience with different people, and not just profess religious, but just different people and different religious spheres, right? But sometimes profess religious. There is a distinction there, almost like you're on that side of the line, I'm on this side. But the Norbertines do a really exceptional job of welcoming everyone into that fold. And as associates, as lay associates that work with professors, just kind of curious what that experience is like for you. You both kind of shared in your stories little tidbits of that, but particularly, focusing on that theme. What's it like? Maybe for people that haven't had the experience of working in such close proximity.
Well, one of the things that comes to mind immediately for me is the social aspect of being involved with the Norbertines. Probably every Norbertine here has been in our house one time or another. And we used to have a shore house on the Jersey Shore, and the Norbertines would go down and rent a place every summer for 3 or 4 weeks. And even down there, we would have them over for dinner. But with, like anything, we became closer to a few Norbertines. And one of them was Father Andrew, another one was Father Hubert. And we became so involved with them, and we all shared a fondness for cooking.
Okay.
And so with 2 other couples here at the Abbey, and Andrew and Hubert, we formed a little gourmet group. And every 6 weeks or so, we'd get together. One of us would be hosts, and one of the couples would be hosts, and we'd design the menu and then make assignments to everybody. And so it just circulated among our houses, and then periodically, when it was the Norbertines' turn, they knew enough people who could lend them their house if they were away, and so we saw some pretty neat houses. when they were hosting.
Uh-huh.
So, but maybe that gives you an idea of
Yeah,
how
absolutely.
close we became to them, not just on a spiritual level, but on a very personal level.
Sure. That was, in my first experience coming to the Abbey, very apparent to me that that component of the charism of hospitality
Definitely.
is very paramount.
Yeah.
I think that still exists, not to the same extent. By the time I came along, that wasn't as obviously happening. Maybe the Abbey had gotten bigger, or people had gotten older, or there had been the separation.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there aren't that many of us with dark hair anymore.
But there's still that feeling, I think, of hospitality. And I think
sure.
for me, the priests at the Abbey are, well, the Sisters of Notre Dame, they weren't anti-priests, but they didn't hold them in the reverence that the traditional Catholic parish held the priest who was God, right?
Mm-hmm.
More or less God on earth, and what he said went. The sisters were not into that. So I was always a little weird, and we used to say that priests should actually wear, before you go to confession, the priest should wear a t-shirt that tells you what kind of priest he is. 13th century, 15th century, 20th century. So you knew what you were doing.
Yeah, sure.
But what had struck me at the Abbey was the clarity and the community of the priestly message. I mean, I'm sure that the professor is different as we are in terms of who, in many ways, but spiritually I think they're all on the same path, and I think that's very clear.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's the clarity of the Abbeys. I've always said I love the Abbey for the questions it doesn't ask. It doesn't say, are you divorced? Are you gay? Have you? It just says we're looking. Are you looking for God? We are too.
Yeah. Those are often questions that so easily turn people away.
Right.
Yeah. There's no inquiry beyond that. And
Right.
if I can bring it back to where both of you started with your sharing today, was that you were both seeking and you're finding the Abbey.
Yeah.
And when we're seeking and we're posed with questions that maybe make us feel judged, or in some way be contrary to that which we are seeking. Right? We're seeking healing to maybe those things that we struggle with, or just have been part of our lives that we have no control over, right? But they've just happened.
Right.
And here we find ourselves looking to, what did you phrase, something to be better? Looking to be better when you were looking to grow earlier, when you were talking about your move from Virginia up to Pennsylvania. Something about, we know that things could be better, or...
Yeah, that's what you said.
Right.
Well, we had experienced a high in Virginia and in Kansas, and knew that it was going to be difficult to find that back here. And that's what led us to make inquiries, and that's what led us to be at this place. What occurred to me when you were just speaking now, Kate, that I think one of the glues that holds this place together is that it's an intentional community. It's not a parish.
That's exactly right.
We're all here by choice. And so there's that commonality that we all share. And we're aware of it. And we value it.
And just a simple thing, like there is only one Sunday Mass.
Yeah.
So we're all there together every Sunday. It's not that sometimes you go at 5, or sometimes you go at 9, or sometimes you go at 7:30, and everybody's Sunday's very much the same. So it does feel like a spiritual community.
Yeah, and that's funny you mentioned that, because I'm thinking of how if you go to your local parish, you may not even see your pastor or the priests that are there. Like, there may be a visiting priest that weekend, and that in itself can, not detrimental, but it has an effect on that relationship that you're talking about with the professor religious, for sure.
And you might have noticed already that when you have Mass at the Abbey, you look out on a Sunday and everybody's sitting in the same seat every Sunday. I mean, you know where to look. And Andrew has tried and tried. He told us once he said, you have to move throughout the church and talk to people. So we used to sit on what I call the shelves in the choir, So we all did move once. And we've been in the same place ever since.
Yeah.
Yeah, we tend to be pretty habitual, right?
Yeah, when you come in on Sunday, you know somebody's missing. You look around and say, oh, Terry's not here. Sue's not here.
We went home on Sunday and called Joe Sisignano because he's always in front of us and he hasn't been there for 2 Sundays. So, we have to call him up and say, what's going on, Joe?
Yeah, for sure. That's something that I think a lot of people value, is being recognized, and even when they're not there, having their absence recognized, right? So this year, 2020, has been different for everyone, for the entire world. How have the associates adapted? What's kept you connected in 2020?
Well,
I think the small groups have been our saving grace.
Yeah.
And
go ahead.
have we always had small groups?
Oh, yeah.
Since the beginning?
Yes.
I think there was consciousness that there was such a big group for some. That's right. That for some community growth, we needed to be in smaller groups. And initially, we changed small groups every year. The idea was that then you would really get to know this small group of people spiritually a year, and the next year you'd get, and maybe in 3 or 4 years you'd know everybody closely and spiritually. That didn't actually work because people got very comfortable in their small groups and didn't want to change.
Kind of like the pews, right?
Yeah, right.
Exactly. So, and so they have the groups have added, and people have moved depending on when the group meets or whatever. But I think the small groups have been very active on Zoom or whatever, Google Meet.
In fact, our small group just met last night on Zoom.
That's fantastic.
We had an hour and 15 minutes almost on Julian Norwich. It was good.
And now you can actually come back to the Abbey to worship on Sundays and for the office regularly. So that, I'm sure, has been a relief and an avenue to that greater sense of community that you seek, right? This has been a really, really interesting time for our faith lives, and it's, for me at least, really highlighted those 2 components of my personal faith journey along with everyone else's that I'm entwined with, right? And you recognize that, it seems to me, most immediately, like within your family and those that you are closest with spiritually, we could say, right? I could certainly see how, in having that regularity of worship here at the Abbey, both internally within their daily schedule of worship, but just even that regular Sabbath, your regular Sunday Mass, the Eucharist that you go to receive and participate in, not having that can really just, throw off
it's
your
like
compass.
The food
right?
you need.
Yeah.
One thing that I think has really, a good thing that's come out of 2020 is we've talked and talked and talked for at least, 5 years, maybe longer, about how to keep associates who've moved away, how to keep them connected. They still want to be associates. And my initial thinking with that was, no, if you move away, you move, so wherever you go, find a new group, or I guess. And then it dawned on me, and I forget who was talking about missing the Abbey, maybe it was the Strausses or something a few years ago. I thought, no, that's not right, because if you've been an associate and you feel like it's your spiritual family, when you move out of state, you don't leave your family. You may move away from your family, but you don't leave them. So it's just like, I can understand now why people feel they don't want to leave the Abbey. And whether it was just laziness or incompetence or not paying attention, we talked and talked about being able to connect somehow online, and we never did. I certainly didn't make any initiatives, and I don't.
This forced us into it.
And this has forced us into it. So I think never again will anybody leave. And we, now our small group, we have a couple from Virginia, and she's actually in the last months of her life. So it's been very meaningful, And I know other groups are tuning in too from distances. So that's been really good. And Frank had said at one point early on, we were talking at the beginning of the shutdown, Frank said, well, we could have the whole group on. And I thought, oh my God, 40 people on Zoom, I can't imagine it. But
7 or 8 is a challenge.
But now we've got you, it might be better.
We're all helping each other, right? We sure are. The virtual or the possibilities that have been opened up by our awareness of the virtual sphere and what that can help us with are seemingly just growing by the day now in terms of what we can do and how we can stay connected. A bit of a non sequitur, but kind of related to what you were saying in terms of people being remote. I know some offices have already deemed that employees are not coming back until 2020 or something like that. And I think it's Bermuda is offering 1-year work visas with unlimited entrance and exit for people that want to set up remote on the beach because they know they don't have to be in their office.
Wow.
So that, like I said, a little bit off topic, but the possibilities, right? The possibilities of this challenging time have blessed us with. I think we are still growing in our awareness of what we can really do and how we can stay connected.
Well, I would definitely be up for some kind of spiritual abbey program set up on a beach in Bermuda.
Mm-hmm.
You in, Frank?
We can start to explore that concept of mission, and absolutely, I'm all for that, sure. Yeah. So how about going forward? What do you foresee off the cuff? What's the future of the Associates? I know 2020 is kind of an awkward year to ask anyone, what do you foresee the future being like? But from what you have shared, and this being a very, to me, seemingly organic process for both of you, and for, I would imagine, most, if not all, the Associates.
Well, I think the reality of the situation here is that the Abbey might not be here in another 15 or 20 years. We're all getting older, we're slowing down, vocations are at a minimum.
Right.
And I think if the Norbertines are not here, then the lay people won't be here. Personally, I'll always be an associate, and I'll always be a Norbertine. And so whether this place is here or isn't here, it's not going to change my, my personal spirituality or where I am in my relationship with God.
Right. Thank you.
We did, I think, we got into, as associates, we really got into a lot of anxiety about what's our future, what are we going to do, what are we going to be, what's it going to look like. And I felt strongly we almost got to the place where we were not paying enough attention to what we have and what we're doing and the present moment, and getting back to doing the best we can right now and leaving the future to God, because I think we'll be here in 10 years, we'll be here in 20, I don't know. And that's up to the Lord, it's not up to me.
Yeah.
And as associates, I think at the moment, yes, we're all older, and we do have some really young and active, not really young, but very active people who have another 20 years in them for sure. So we should keep building what we have.
Yeah. I think that's a pretty good approach to take.
The only approach, really, isn't it?
I think so, or the only way out is through. So, yeah, with the good faith that has led you here to Daylesford, that's also what sustains us and leads us forward, for sure. Uncertain times, but very blessed and very grace-filled. And I'm grateful for the both of you for coming on today and sharing your journey with the Associates and giving us a history and a look at this very unique community here at Daylesford.
If anyone watching or listening has any interest in becoming an associate, they can just contact the Abbey, contact me, contact Frank, contact
Nancy Santa Maria.
Nancy Santa Maria.
Thank you. So let's get some contact. So the Abbey, is there an email address they might reach out to for associates?
I don't know that there is one in general, but Nancy Santa Maria is the director of formation.
Okay, so the people that they would, if someone were interested in
She'd
becoming
be the contact person.
Would be Nancy.
Would they be, okay, Nancy, very good.
Yeah.
All right.
And then we have a program of formation. People who are interested spend several months with Nancy, 6 months with Nancy, in what we call discernment, learning about the Abbey, about Norbertine charism, various types of prayer, Lectio Divina, things like that. And then they make a decision: are they really? is this really for them?
Mm-hmm.
And then they move into a following year, almost year and a half, of a more formal formation where they have classes with the Norbertines.
Okay.
And they become much more active as associates.
Mm-hmm.
Spiritual directions encouraged. They have to be involved in a ministry.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, if they want to be fully fledged associates, they make an annual commitment, which we all do every year.
Okay. Thank you. Very good. So,
And in terms of where we'll be and all the anxiety about the future, at the moment our spiritual advisor from the professed is Father Joe Serrano,
mm-hmm.
and there's just nobody more optimistic
Mhm.
or the embodiment of a joyful Christian. He's just great to be around
He is.
and encourage, and he loves the associates. He says being with us has been one of the highlights of his priesthood. He really enjoys being with us.
Wow.
So he's great. They could call, anyone could contact him too.
Absolutely. Well, I usually give at the end of our podcast, I usually give a plug for vocations, and I'm still going to do that, but at the end of this one, with thanking you for your time and your sharing and your transparency and honesty, for just willing to chat and have a conversation about this today. I want to give the associates their space too to say that if you're interested and you're seeking and you're looking for a spiritual community, a spiritual home that kind of meets you where you're at on your journey, is what I'm hearing from both of your stories. Daylesford is a great place for that. I myself am not an associate. I'm new to the community here, working at the Abbey, but it certainly has been a great affirmation of many of the things that you have attested to today. In my experience so far, just in really embodying that component of the charism of communio. It's so apparent and central to life here at Daylesford. So if you're out there and you're searching, no matter how old or young you may be, the Mass here on Sunday is at 10:30, so feel free to join. You're welcome to join for the office. The community prays, in the morning prayer at 8:30 and then Vespers at 4:30 in this pandemic time. So if you're interested to check out the website, daylesford.org, there's more information on there about the associates, about the Abbey, life here at the Abbey. If you do feel as if you might be receiving that call to discern religious life, by all means, the Abbey is a great place here to inquire about that, whether it be with the Norbertines or just in general. If you feel as if that call may be coming through on your end, then by all means definitely start to explore it. But you can reach out at daylesford.org/vocations, also vocations at daylesford.org. Please keep in mind that the Spring House is a program and a production of programs, rather, that is made possible by your generosity. So we are most grateful for those that have supported us, be it through their sharing of the content, be it through their financial support, or of course through your prayers are very, very important. And if you think that the Lord is calling you to take some time for yourself now, or if you feel as if that it's time to just press pause in your life and maybe take a break to contemplate things, even just to kind of process these last few months, the Abbey is currently open for private retreat. So we will be ready to receive you to make a retreat here if you reach out. That's 610-601-8702. Again, 610-601-8702 to get a hold of the Spirituality and Retreat Center so we can get you set up to make a personal and private retreat here at the Abbey. So again, today we thank, we give a lot of gratitude to Kate Wunner and Frank Kenney for coming on talking about the Norbertine Associates. And we thank everyone at home in their cars or wherever you may be listening to or watching this podcast. Thanks so much. God bless, and we'll see you next time. Content from the Spring House is available free of charge. If you find this ministry is of service to you, we hope that you will support us in providing this content in an ongoing manner. We consider this a pay-it-forward endeavor. Not only would your donation help us to cover the expenses of producing its content, you would make it possible for us to offer it to others as well. As long as we are able, by your generosity, we will continue to produce content which we believe will serve the church. We hope that you might become a partner in this ministry. Please click the link in the description below this video to make a donation.